So are these like overuse and balance problems unavoidable if you use a claw?
No, they're not unavoidable for any gaming injury. Everything that we do and we talk about, and today we're talking about claw, but every one of these injuries is preventable if you appropriately keep your body in shape. So, well, there's a few steps, and I'll talk about a few, and then I'll pitch it to somebody else. But ultimately, you want to take care of your body off the game, and it's not so. A lot of people are gaming and they dive into the game, they start playing right away. So that could help exacerbate the problem because the muscles and the tendons are essentially cold. Maybe not cold as in, outside in the winter in New Jersey, but cold as in they're not ready to be contracting at a rapid pace. So the first thing that we always recommend is to perform a warm up. And the warm up is exactly what it sounds like. It's to get blood flow to the muscle to increase the essentially to increase the contractile velocity and the ability of the muscle to contract when you want it to. But also at the same time, that increased blood flow increases oxygen, increases nutrients, and it can help you prevent the injury. So the warm up prior to the gaming is important. You see it in traditional sports, so you should also do it with gaming. And obviously, I'm going to recommend our own warm up because that's what we do. I'll post it in the chat. The warm up program we have that specifically that will help the muscles that we're talking about, that first dorsal interosseous, is when we do the opening and closing. So we call this abduction of the fingers. So you just open them all the way, close them all the way. The other one is we do the finger tap. So the finger tap is including the knuckle this way, and we do it with a rounded finger and we do it with a flat finger, and both of those will include warm up of the first dorsal interosseous. And then the last one that includes that one is the finger roll. So if you put your fingertips together and you roll your index fingers back and forth, you'll get a little bit of activation to that first dorsal interosseous, warm it up, and allow you to be able to perform, and hopefully with a less risk of injury. And then, sorry, one sec. So then, Dan already touched on it briefly, but the next big thing is to take breaks. So it's in that research study that we found, it was a 10-minute break. So if you feel like you're fatigued, you feel that burning in your hand, and if you feel like your performance is starting to slow down, you notice that in your gameplay, then that would be a good time for you to take a break. So if you're streaming, maybe put the game to the side and put a just talking thing and just hang out with your chat for a minute. If you're in a competition, unfortunately, then you might not be afforded the 10 minutes to be able to do that. But on your own time, make sure you schedule those 10-minute breaks whenever you feel that burning fatigue, whenever you feel like your performance is starting to slow down. Because the breaks are, as Dan mentioned about that research study, is what brings back your performance, and it lessens the fatigue, and it could actually decrease your risk of injury. And one more note about the breaks is, I know a lot of people have been told otherwise, but we're here to tell you that stretching prior to gaming and stretching during gaming is, yeah, Dan is already doing it. It's the absolute no. Stretching beforehand and stretching during will only do one thing, and that is decrease your velocity, or essentially decrease your performance. So ultimately, it decreases the elasticity of the muscle, and it decreases the speed. So if you think about what's important in gaming, in first-person shooters, most importantly, is being faster than the other person. That comes up a lot. So you want to keep your speed. Don't stretch during, and don't stretch beforehand. Save the stretching for when you're done.
And another thing on taking breaks, you look at professional basketball like LeBron James, and he's not in the game the entire time.
Yeah, exactly.
He's able to take a break and continue to perform. If he was in the game the whole time, he would probably overheat and pass out. Who knows? But the
When
fact
you
that
look
he's able
at
to take those breaks, he's able to kind of do a reset a little bit and then continue to perform at his max. And you
yeah,
kind
and
of
you
relay
look at
that
it, these
to the game.
players are going to take two types of breaks. There's the come out of the game, sit on the bench for a few minutes, so they're not using that first dorsal interosseous muscle or running, jumping, doing whatever needed for their sport. So they take the small break to relieve it a little bit, but then at at the end of each quarter and at halftime, you always see them with their trainers, like moving around a little bit, like giving more relief to it. The longer breaks to help relax the body and get it ready to perform again for the rest of the game.
Right. What else could we do besides? What else can you do besides take a break? Let's put that over to Jordan.
I wonder what Jordan's going to talk about.
Yeah, I wonder what we're going to talk about. So
Yeah.
what's
Jordan gonna do?
We're going to talk about my favorite P word, posture. So yeah, I mean it's definitely important, because you want to it's hard with the controller. It is a little difficult to maintain, I would say, good shoulder position because this is way too close in comparison to my shoulders. If I can, right, not even close to the center line of my shoulders, right. Even my mouse and keyboard setup is not perfect, but that's because my gigantic mouse pad is not big enough. I need a bigger one. I can't reach what I need to, but yeah. So you want to try to keep your elbows and wrists in as good a position as you can, right? And in a perfect world, and I know we don't live there, you want to have your elbows at 90 degrees, right? And I'm sure everybody starts there with the controller either in their lap or resting on an armrest and on a desk. And as things get more and more intense, we start to do this because getting closer to the controller always makes us play better. Always.
Of course.
Never forget that.
100%, always.
Closer to the controller and closer to the screen, and you will always play better. But,
Elbows on the knees.
yes, have to be on the knees. You need to be hunched over like a little gremlin playing a video game. But seriously, you want to be sitting up straight, shoulders back and down, elbows at a 90-degree angle, and again, you can't really adjust the shoulder position because of the controller. But we also want to not rest our elbows like directly on the armrest, because essentially what's going to happen is you're going to start to compress nerves in your elbow, which is going to send feedback down into your hands, right? And that's going to ultimately affect the way that you play and how you react. And last I checked, we need our hands to move as quickly and as precisely as they can to play well. So one thing that I do, and this is kind of not so much the opposite, but I guess a modification of what we've been telling you to do. So I notice that when I'm playing Warzone with my friends, if my armrests are at my normal position so keeping my shoulders down, elbows at 90, all that kind of stuff, I actually play worse. So what I have to do is I have to drop them down so that I would have to almost not push my elbows down, but they would have to almost hang below their normal position. But I don't sit like that when I'm playing. My elbows are actually up, still at that 90 degree. It's just it allows my elbows and arms a little bit more freedom to move. So I would assume that I would probably do the same thing with the controller, only because I'm going to end up picking it up, and you can see as I start to bring it up, my shoulders hike a little bit.
You elevate it, yeah.
So it's not the best, but I also would say it's not the worst. Right? If you're playing like this where you have no neck, not okay. That's not great. Right? We want it to be back and down. So here versus this, you see the same thing. My neck just disappears. So you want to make sure that it's back and down. Again, elbows at 90. Because it's going to help just to reduce any kind of strain that's going to be, added strain onto the muscles as well as the nerves in the area, right? The claw grip, I don't know that it would.
How's it going, Lumai? Psych?
Trigger.
Sorry, shout out in the chat.
That would trigger anything with like carpal tunnel like syndrome, but I won't say that it won't either, right? Being in this weird position where it's that forced extension of your wrist, and then I don't know about you guys, but if I do play the controller, I tend to death grip it, so it's nothing but a sweaty mess underneath my hands.
Oh man.
So you're gonna overactivate the flexor group, so you can kind of induce somewhat of a little bit of carpal tunnel syndrome, but not always. But you want to stick to your basics, right? Like we said, shoulders back and down, head in a good position, elbows at 90. If you're like me, drop the armrest down a little bit so you're not resting on them. They're kind of there if you need to like drop when you're dead or annoyed. But that would be my contribution in terms of posture to helping to prevent this in the long run.
So one thing, I think you mentioned the position, but I'm not sure if you specifically mentioned the nerve. Did you mention the nerve?
In the elbow?
Yeah.
Leaning
Yeah,
on the ulnar
I
nerve.
did not. So you're gonna be leaning on the ulnar nerve, right? So when you bump your elbow, thank you. I know I missed something.
Yeah, there you go.
And you get that like funny bone or that zinger down your arm. That's nicking or hitting the ulnar nerve, and you can actually induce that yourself. If you flick the inside of your elbow, you can actually stimulate it a little bit, and you'll feel the sensation down your hand.
It's awful.
So you definitely. I'm gonna adjust
Bad.
for a second here so you can see the armrest. Can you see it yet? No.
There you
There
go.
it is. All right. So you don't
Nice.
want to be like leaning. See how my elbows are, the inside of my elbows are touching. That's when you're gonna, and almost resting on the edge, like right here. You can't see it. Right in this
Yeah.
position where my finger is.
You could see it.
I can actually feel the sensation into my pinky and my ring finger just sitting this way. So imagine playing like that for an hour. Your hand would have to go numb. I don't know
It goes
how.
numb.
Right. So you want to make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on the inside of that elbow and compressing that ulnar nerve, because that will ultimately cause damage over time, and you definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
And it would most likely decrease performance during your gaming session.
Absolutely, you're almost going to fatigue the muscles more because you're interrupting their signals.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
that ulnar nerve that Jordan's talking about, that funny bone, the sensation is only the outside of your hand, so it's the pinky, ring finger, front and back. But the motor control actually includes that first dorsal interosseous that we keep talking about. So if you're compressing your elbow and you're squeezing the ulnar nerve, you're squeezing the nerve that controls the most important muscle involved in your claw grip. So posture, there it is again.
Posture.
JP bringing it
Always.
So we got posture that can affect your performance. Not taking enough breaks, not warming up. What about diet? Can diet have an effect on your
Yeah.
performance?
100%. And while we usually don't think about it, because when you're gaming, you only think about, television or monitor you're using, the game, how you're sitting in your chair, all this. But, it's going back to that phrase, you are what you eat. So everything you put in your body, as your body is building and rebuilding, all of the tissue, everything we have is really made up of our foods. So in the best case scenario, consuming higher quality foods and snacks will make you healthier. Whether this is decreased inflammation, whether this is, kind of preventing, disease, in the sense that a lot of poor foods are going to make you not as healthy and more susceptible to coming down with something. But so you're really looking for hopefully a well balanced diet, filled with fruits, vegetables, hopefully something organic with limited or no, hopefully trans fats or minimally processed foods. But it's not just you are what you eat; it's also you are what you drink. Water is
Yeah.
often a underappreciated aspect of our diet. I see Cam right there. I got something here.
Look
We're
at
all
that. Like,
rocking the
I got
water
my-
train.
I got my Twitch,
Hydroponics.
Twitch cup.
Yeah, there you go with the G Fuel Twitch. Beautiful. And yeah, I mean, our bodies are 60 to 70% water. And it's even higher in certain places like the brain, the heart, the lungs, all very important places. But they're mostly water. And it's involved in forming the plasma of the blood. It's involved in detoxing the body, in cooling us down, heat dissipation. There's countless effects that water is going to have on us. So, a question's often asked is how much fluid should you intake? And generally, the fast math for you is half of your weight in fluid ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, drink 50 fluid ounces. 120, drink 60 fluid ounces, so on and so forth.
Math.
Not the hardest math, but still math.
And that's for our U.S. viewers. For those,
Yes,
for everybody
yes.
else that uses metric, your kilo is probably pretty close. Maybe just drink your body weight in fluid ounces, in the kilogram body weight in fluid ounces, and maybe add a few extra because it's not exactly half, but
Yeah, it's 2 versus 2.2, so
pretty close.
it's generally around the same goal that you're looking for. But also, if you've noticed, I didn't say drinking water. I said ingesting fluids.
fluids.
So a lot of the things that we drink have have water in them, and it's something to be aware about. I know it's hard. I always struggle drinking a lot of water, But it's good to know that some of the teas that we drink, some of the juices, even coffee, a lot of the foods we eat, such as fruits, vegetables, things like that, have a high water content. So that can really help push you towards that half your body weight amount. But a side note on that, alcohol does not count.
Does not
I
count.
know it's a
Does not
liquid,
count.
but it does not count.
Yeah, that
Alcohol
ain't
actually has an ability to inhibit or stop the effect of ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. And there's a whole chemical process that goes through in the body and the way it's used. But essentially, what happens is drinking alcohol inhibiting the ADH is going to cause dehydration. So, if you're gaming on a Friday night and you're drinking, you really should look to increase the amount of water you're drinking to compensate for the loss that you're having due to the alcohol.
Right. So controller call, you're gonna have an imbalance, and then White Claws, you're gonna have
There you go.
dehydration.
A different
Nice.
balance. Yes, we're learning about all the claws today,
Very nice.
just not Kawhi Leonard.
So wait, one thing.
I'm sure he does stuff.
This is just a really dumb joke that I thought of that I have to mention. There was a comic strip I saw, and it said the doctor was telling the patient, make sure you drink plenty of fluids, and the patient's response was, "Doc, that's literally all I drink." It was really stupid, but I think it's so funny. Drink plenty of fluids. That's literally all I drink.
How else am I supposed to intake a fluid?
I had a conversation
What else am I
with
drinking?
Paige today in terms of drinking water, and she said to me, she's like, I don't like water. I was like, what do you mean you don't like water? Like, I understand that it doesn't
You
taste
are
like
water.
anything, so you can't not like it. I was like, and you don't like basically 70% of your body. Like, your majority of you
myself.
is water, so you don't like you.
I hate myself.
Right.
And she just looked at me and was like, shut up. Like, no. I was like, no, that's the truth. I was
That's
like,
how it
you
works.
don't like you. And obviously, that's, being a little facetious there, but no, water is so important, for, us in terms of, providing treatment. Generally, at least my experience, people who are more hydrated, drink more water, they're actually easier to treat and get better faster than those that don't drink any water
Absolutely.
at all.
The muscles have such a high content of water. It's important for maintaining the ability to stretch and relax, doing those concentric, eccentric motions. When the muscle is dry, think of like, what's easier to kind of move around, although you shouldn't really play with your food, a juicy steak or some beef jerky. One is really going to have a lot of give to it and movability and motion, all that. And beef jerky, you don't want your muscles to look like that. You want
No.
hydration and to stay, full and thick.
And for those of you who are thick with two C's,
Yeah.
so for those of you who are not meat eaters and vegetarians, I will relate it to you. A dry sponge, right? If you bend it in half, it will break. Versus a wet sponge when you're cleaning, you can twist it in 15 different directions and it'll go back to normal, right? So
Good.
it's a little exaggerated example, right? Our muscles aren't going to snap in half when we bend them, but the principle is there, right? Hydrated
The
sponge is better.
pliability.
Yes, the pliability, right? That's what we want. So all in all, drink some water, please.
Cool. Okay, let's move on. What about rest and recovery?
Also extremely important. We had given we'd done a broadcast on this a little while ago, and one of the big kind of scary takeaways was we'll start off with rest and recovery with sleep, which is one of the really most important things you can do. And it's been shown, research and all of that a lack of sleep or decreased not getting the optimal amount of sleep increases risk of all-cause mortality. Across the board, your chances of dying from anything will increase
Goes way up.
from lack of sleep. Way up. Not
That's
good.
terrifying.
Yeah.
That's
It
terrifying.
is. It is. But also, when you think about it, it's something that we all can do. There's so many hours in the day, and if you plan your day out and have it, scheduled in to get those optimal 8 hours of sleep, it's something that's important for not just your physical recovery, but also mental recovery, performance. It's important for detoxification, not just of the body, but the brain itself will go through a cleaning phase during sleep. and decreases risk cardiovascular cancer, Alzheimer's, all these things. But to get it, you really need your full 8 hours. I know it varies a little bit for each person, but it's important to get a full uninterrupted 8 hours. We had spoken last time about this. There's 4 stages of non-REM sleep, rapid eye motion, and then there's REM sleep. And each phase and stage has its own benefit, but they don't go necessarily in order, and they're not weighted the same scheduling wise. So what tends to happen is the back half of your sleep is mostly REM sleep, which is important for the recovery phase. So when you miss hours of sleep and you're only getting 6, you're losing more of the REM sleep as opposed to some of the lighter stages. That deep sleep is more in the back end. So important for physical health, mental health, get your 8 hours of sleep. So while that's resting at night, we can also rest during the day. So this is, like Corey mentioned before, taking breaks. I guess we'd all mentioned it before. Taking breaks, recover, not just breaks during gaming for a minute or two between matches, getting your hand out of that position, standing up, doing what needed to be, but also trying to take these 10-minute breaks, because aside from health, playing at your best is really the most important thing in terms of competing in these games. If I'm not hitting the buttons faster, I am losing. That would frustrate me to no end, and especially knowing that a simple 10-minute break scattered throughout my streaming session or gaming session can make me play better. It seems like a very achievable and attainable goal. And I think we had touched upon this also, but not only do we have our warm-ups in the beginning, but we have our stretching after the session, help prevent those aches and pains, initiate the healing process of the body, help to prevent future injuries, kind of restoring the length of the muscles and the range of motion in the body, kind of relieving that chronic tension that we really want to avoid before it happens.
Well done. Well said. Yeah, sleep is super
Thanks.
important, and that really when we did the podcast and also reading the link I posted on healthy sleep habits in chat, it really opened my eyes to getting a good night's sleep and like the importance of it. And it's something I've never really focused on, but I've done a lot. I mean, I've spent a lot of time focusing on just getting a good sleep now. And
The one thing that I think is so funny about sleep, it's literally the easiest thing to do.
You do nothing.
Because you don't have to do anything. You just have to schedule the time to go to sleep and make sure you schedule enough time before you wake up. So your scheduling should be, if I go to sleep at 9, I don't want to wake up before 5. And if you go to sleep at midnight, I don't want to wake up before 8. If you could just figure out that gap, the rest of it, the sleep portion should be really easy. And if it's not, if you're having trouble sleeping, check out that link. We'll post it on the YouTube as well. The healthy sleep habits, there's ways to figure out how to sleep better. If you're struggling with it, we call it sleep hygiene. There's a way to figure that out.